So Guru Nation, I'm here with Alyssa Sonef. She's a CRA. This is somebody who I ran into on TikTok because I've been doing clinical research stuff on there for like a year now, and that platform's really been growing like crazy. And Alyssa was one of those people that commented, and she said she's a CRA, and that's basically how she got started was CRC route. Before that, she was clinical research assistant, and now she's a CRA with one of the larger CROs.
hmm
So, thank you, Alyssa, for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And as a CRA, I gotta ask, how often do you use TikTok?
I always start videos and I never finish them because I get on site and the world comes tumbling down and I can't finish my a day in my life.
We're missing like a CRA on TikTok. There's a lot of people in research
Yeah.
that just occasionally share. There's me that I kind of try to touch everything. But then it's like to have it just the CRA doing TikTok stuff. I haven't seen it, so it's wide
Yeah,
open, Alyssa, as if you needed more to do.
yeah, right. I do know a few CRAs that are on TikTok.
Get them to do something.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's you. So, anyways, Alyssa's LinkedIn will be underneath this video, and if you're listening to the podcast, thank you. It's also going to be in the show notes. So, Alyssa, how did you get into research? Because it seems like relatively quickly after college, you got a bachelor's degree. You want to kind of walk us through like when you first discovered the idea of research?
Yeah, so I graduated my bachelor's of science in biology, as most of us did. I was kind of lost because I was an accounting major and then I changed halfway through and I still wanted to graduate on time. So I did summer, winter, fall, spring. I did everything for like the last 2 years. When I graduated, I was like, I need a breather. So I wanted to be a PA because I think everybody wants to go doctor, medical route. And so I was like, okay, how? Like, how do you start? Where do you go? I played college softball, so that's what got me through school. So I didn't have time to do observation hours. I didn't have any free time at all. So I graduated and I was like, okay, I need to get observation hours. That's my first thing to do. So I was literally emailing all the clinics by me. I was walking into clinics with coffee, like trying to talk to a PA, like, how can I shadow you? This. No luck, nothing. So, and I mean, I was doing that every day. And so then I got into scanning medical records because it was all I could do. Like it was the only thing that would happen is the only thing that I could get into a clinic setting. So I go, I'm like driving, 3 hours to go scan medical records somewhere. And it was really interesting because that taught me like, what's a demographic? Like, what is this? What are medical records? Like, what are you even looking at when you're looking at medical records? So that was actually really interesting. And so I went to go scan medical records at a place in Houston. And I was sitting next to a PA, and I knew because she had the PA book that you like read. And so I like kept glancing over, and I was like waiting to like start a conversation with her. And I was like, "Hey, like you're a PA, like I'm trying to be a PA." And she was like, "So I actually started by doing research at like a small clinic." And I was like, "Oh wow." She's like, "You'll get amazing experience and everything medical related." And I was like, "How cool." So she referred me to that place, and so I went to go interview, and I was like, at this point, I didn't care. I was desperate. I was like, I'll do anything. Like,
Was it a small
I,
clinic or like a
there were
big one?
maybe 5 employees. There
Okay.
was the PI, the site manager, a coordinator, a front desk,
Okay.
and a research assistant. So like tiny, and it was only women's health. So I go and I was like, I'll do anything, whatever you need, I will help. I will do anything. I just want to get my foot in the door. So I started as a research assistant. And that's like where I learned everything. I mean, they would sit me in a room with all the ISFs and they'd give me a stack of papers and they'd be like, file these.
Oh
And here I
yeah.
am
Yeah,
just
yeah.
sitting there for hours. So I had to learn like what an ISF is, where things get filed, what
And
they look.
nobody really trained you like because I do that to my new staff too. I think the ISF and data entry is like the best place to start because you
Absolutely.
don't need that much training, but they'll inevitably ask you question like, "Hey, where does this go?" And then you explain what that is. I feel like that has helped me train people better than, making them watch a video or do GCP or
Oh
something.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I would ask them questions because, like, what is a CV? You know, like, what are these things? I had zero clue. So that's like where I started learning things. I just kind of picked it up. And then the coordinator that I had was amazing. I mean, she was top notch. She's been doing this for 6 years. She was like top of her game. She had books, flashcards, like the how to be a great coordinator, like what clinical research is. Because she was certified, so she had like all of her study guides, and she would give them to me. She had like all these tabs in a book, and I would literally go home and I would like eat, breathe, live clinical research. I was like, what is a coordinator? So like I slowly started getting more involved, and then one of the coordinators left, so I kind of had to jump into it. We're doing 8 enrolling studies with one coordinator. We were seeing 12 patients a day, so I jumped in headfirst. So I did the research assistant for maybe like a few months. I'd say like 4 or 5 months. And then that's when I started getting into coordinating, and man, it took off. I would say once I started making source, that was it. Like I was in. I could read a protocol. I could
You
comprehend a
like that? The
I
sort.
did the protocol in and out. They sent me to an investigator meeting by myself, and that was it. I was like, I know that this is where I want to be, and this is how I want to be.
Wow. So no more PA, just like that.
Yeah, no more PA. Because I was like, I was working with women's health, and the trials for endometriosis, and seeing these women come in, day out, they have nothing. They're in excruciating pain. Nothing can help them, and you're finally giving them some relief. And that worked wonders for me. So I was doing the coordinating for there, but like I said, it's a small clinic and I was only doing women's health. So I knew that I wanted to do more. I knew that I wanted to get into gastro. I wanted to get into oncology, pulmonary. I wanted to get into everything. So that's where I kind of started like venturing out. I'd apply to like this and this, different coordinating positions. And everybody's like, oh, you only have a few months of experience. Like, eh. And so I applied for a study manager position with Eligo, and I like applied and I was like, no way. Like, no way. Like, this is just a shot in the dark. Like, no. And I got the interview and I was like, man, I'm just going to do it for experience. And then I got the position and I was like, wow. I was like, no way.
But that's a good attitude to have. I'm just gonna go in to do the interview for the experience. I tell people all the time. Sometimes people get scared, like, "Oh, I applied for all these jobs. They actually called me in. Now I'm scared." I tell them, "Look, have no expectations. Just go. Use it as
Mhm.
practice." And that's exactly what you did. It sounds like. So you were a coordinator for what, less than a year before you did this?
I would say so. I was like a research assistant for 4 months, and then I was a coordinator for about 6 months after that before I transitioned to the study manager. And study manager was really just like a golden term for coordinator. So
Yeah.
I was really just a coordinator again for another year, but that coordinating position that I had was insane. I for 2 different clinics. So I was going in between a gastro clinic, a gastroenterologist, and then I was working at a different clinic with 2 different PIs. I was working with an internal medicine doctor, women's health, and the gastro. So I mean, it was insane. Like I think I was doing at a time maybe like 8 to 10 studies. I was seeing patients for a ton of different studies. Like it was,
Wow.
I literally jumped in the deep end. And I, when I say I watched YouTube videos, I read books. I mean, I like all of my days, all the time were all research. Like I wanted to learn everything. Like I would sit there and just listen to it like over and over and over. Like, what is this? What is this? What do you do when this happens? Like, what's an AE? What's an SAE? I mean,
Did
I
you find good
really,
stuff?
oh yeah, I found great. Yeah. And there's so much out there. You just have to look for it. And it's so interesting because once I got deeper into this field, I was like, why, why do not, why does nobody know about it? You know, like all I wanted to do was just tell people, like, I just wanted to tell people, like, this is an option. Like, you
Yeah.
can do this. You don't have to go to medical school. You don't have to be, a physical therapist, a PA. You don't have to. Like, this is an option.
People
So,
don't know, and even when they do know, like, I mean, you're someone who had a bachelor's degree. Actually, we had like very same degree. I was molecular cellular bio,
mhm,
and yeah, but like people even like without degrees, like MAs, CNAs,
mhm.
I actually get more excited for them because, all right, someone like you and I, we have a bachelor's degree. Okay, I couldn't get into med school. You couldn't be a PA. Um, but because we have that degree, we can have a job, right? But
Yeah.
somebody without a degree, they're
Mhm.
kind of either stuck like taking a medical assistant job like CNAs, MAs, for example. They go into a lot of debt actually for those certifications. Um, and that's literally all they can do. Like
Mhm.
they're not going to be able to transition to other industries, and if they do, it's just going to be like some other lower lower paying job until they climb the ladder. But in research, you can like an MA could have done what you did too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I relied on my MAs a lot. Like when I was a coordinator, I mean, I relied on my MAs for a ton of stuff. Like I wasn't doing blood draws. I wasn't, doing that kind of stuff. So I relied on my MAs to do that or to even like mention it to the patients. And it was interesting working at two different places as a coordinator because things were done so differently. In the small clinic, the coordinator does everything, everything. I mean, you're doing IRB stuff, you're doing patient stuff, you're doing everything. And then at a bigger clinic, you're doing things a lot differently. Like you're only doing the EKG and like ConMed's AEs versus
Uh-huh.
everything.
What did you prefer?
I prefer doing everything. I didn't, when
Yeah.
there's so many hands in the pot, things get mixed up. Is the correct ICF filed? Am I using the most up to date ICF? And I had a huge transition when I went to the study manager of a bigger place because there were so many hands in the pot. And, I was running into doing mistakes that I didn't even know were mistakes. Like I relied on the team to have the most up to date ISF, and, a lot of the times it wasn't the case. So
Yeah. That
after,
CRA wasn't doing their job, huh?
yeah, yeah. So after that, I did that for about a year and whew, I was tired. I was tired. Coordinators do not get enough
So how did you go to
anything.
then CRA like
Yeah.
within let's say what's that 2.5, 3 years of site level experience?
Yes. It was about 2.5 years of site level experience. And then I decided I was like, I want to travel, like I want to do more. And then when I went into my study manager position, I ended up having to almost audit all of the work of the last coordinator that was there. And I didn't realize how much I was going to like that. Like how much I was going to like going back through the data, making sure that all of it made sense, making sure that all the deviations were noted. And at the same time, I love traveling. So I was like, I think this is something that I would really enjoy. So as monitors would come in and visit, every week, I just like have a short conversation with them. Like, how did you get into it? Do you like it? Um, how would you do it? What would you look into? Do you have any advice? This and this and this. All my monitors were like, you'd be a great monitor. Like, that'd be amazing. Like, I'd love you to work for my team. Like, blah, 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 blah. So that's when I started applying. And so I was applying for like
Mm.
CRA positions here and there. No bites. I mean, no bites. And I even got like interviews. I think I got an interview with LabCorp, and we had the interview. I think it went well. Not an email back, not a call back, nothing about like any follow ups. So I knew I was like, okay, I know I needed to start a little bit like almost smaller. So that's when I saw the Premier had a CRA Academy. So I was like, okay, like let's do that. So that's when I started with Premiere. I did the interview. They literally called me in an hour and they were like, the position is yours. Like, we would absolutely love to take you through the academy. Sent me the offer letter. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, am I ready? Because that's a big jump. Like, being a CRA, when you're a CRC, like, it looks kind of scary, And so
Yeah.
I was like, am I ready? Like, I had to think about it, talk about it. But then I took it. The academy lasted maybe like 3 months, I think. And then, they just kind of set me on my own. I did my observation visits, sign off visits, and then I've just kind of been doing my own thing since.
So how long from when you got the job offer and then they put you through their training till when you're monitoring on your own? Like what
Yeah.
was that in months?
October, November, December, January, 3 months, about 3 months.
Okay. And so
Yeah.
your first monitoring visit on your own, do you remember it? Like what was it?
Oh,
Um
I was so scared. I was terrified. It was in April. And I went, and I think I was most scared to talk to the PI. Like, that was my biggest fear.
was it
Because
a
he had,
SIV?
no, it was an IMV.
Oh, okay.
So I was like scared. I was like, how do you talk to a PI? Like, I've only ever talked to him as a coordinator. And I didn't want them, because I think a lot of people looked at me like, oh, she's young, she doesn't really know what she's doing. Like, we're not going to take it very seriously. So I had to make sure that everything that I did was by the book, dotted my I's, crossed my T's, like nobody could really question what was happening. Um, but I mean, I was so nervous. I moved really slowly. Like I looked at, it's kind of funny because how I monitor now is so differently. Like before I had a post-it, I remember I had a post-it and I was writing down all the times, like ICF, like UDS, UPT, physical this. And I made sure that it all matched and that everything was perfect. And then they had the right amount of time in between everything. And then I was also verifying data. So I was like really particular. Now it's a little bit different. I'm particular, but I can like get through it. I know what I'm doing now. But I was just really nervous. I was moving really slow. I didn't want to miss anything. Um, and then when I first talked to the PI, I was very like, yeah, so everything looks good. Uh, everybody's doing a great job. And yeah, and they were like, okay. And I had to practice. I mean, I practiced, pretending to talk to a PI and stuff
Oh,
like that
really?
before I could get comfortable. Like, hi, I'm Melissa. I'm the monitor for your trial. Like, it's nice to meet you. I had to do a lot of that stuff.
So how many studies have you've only been there like what, a year or a little more than a year?
A
Like
little less than a year. I
a
started in
little
October,
less.
and I've been monitoring on my own since April, so only like
Okay.
6 months. Yeah.
So I'm guessing just one study and a few sites?
I'm on 2 studies, and I have
Okay.
6 sites for one study, and then I have 3 sites for another study.
Oh, okay. It's pretty good. So
Yeah.
are you on the road like all day or
Oh,
like 30
all
days
the
out of
time.
the month?
All the time. So I was doing like 12 to 14 days on site recently, these past 3 months, but well, the sponsor terminated the study. And there was a backup
Okay.
of data that was just insane. So I had to take over a lot. And then, I mean, the turnover right now in clinical research.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about turnover, but so what indications is this? Are these?
Yeah. So I've actually never worked in psych, and my first trial
Ah,
was in
okay.
psych. Yeah. So a social anxiety disorder, and I mean, I had no idea. I didn't know what a mini was, an LSAS, HAMD. I didn't know any of that. So that was so interesting to learn everything about that and just like see these patients and see the results. That was really interesting. So it's kind of cool because now I have another therapeutic area under my belt. And then another one, I just got put onto it, so I'm still kind of learning it. It's a genetic mutation study, and it's in
Wow.
pediatric patients.
Rare disease.
Rare disease, yeah. So it's very, very interesting. I'm still
Mm,
learning. I'm just trying to, read through the protocol, make sure that I have everything together. And then I start doing monitoring visits for that study at the end of this month.
okay, awesome. Yeah, psych is where I started, and now that I moved here to Yuma, I started with an internal medicine doctor and then a derm, and we just got a neurologist that wants to do studies with us in town.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna start applying for psych studies for him. It'll be nice to get back into that realm
Yeah.
again, CNS. That's cool. So as far as your workload, then 12 to 14 days on site. I mean, it doesn't sound too crazy. Like
Mhm.
you hear stories from other CROs, like how many sites and studies they assign their new CRA. So this seems
Yeah.
reasonable. This
Mhm.
seems like a good pace.
Yeah, and what I do love about Premiere is they only require 7 to 8 days on site. So every additional day that you do on site, they'll compensate you for and stuff like that. So I'm doing more than, what I'm required to do. So they don't I feel like when I look at other CROs, a lot of them require 8 days on site, 10 days on site. And Premier, the way that it works is you do 6.5, and then everything more than that you can get compensated for, as long as you
Okay.
are doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Man, do you guys need more sites?
Oh, yeah.
You might be my monitor then.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I'll contact you after because our neurologist is really good. I'll tell you all about it. But the people who
Yeah,
watch the videos, they know it's like
yeah.
it's been a journey, but it's good. It's about a year in now, as
Oh,
well. So yeah, do you go to Arizona to monitor, or you just stay in Texas?
So I was on the West Coast they had me on the West Coast in the beginning, and then they just transitioned me to be more regional. So now I'm more in the central region.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I have one in Houston, Austin, San Antonio, and then I just got Oklahoma City and Kansas City and Georgia in one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're probably too far west, but you never know. Alyssa,
Yeah.
small world. I'll reach
Hmm.
out. That's cool. So workload, you're doing good. Two studies, you're figuring out. You get to learn. That's what I like also about those smaller CROs. You get to learn multiple indications. You know, you're not like trapped in just. Sometimes at these bigger CROs, they just put you in a therapeutic indication, and you become
Hmm.
like an expert in that. But then how do you market yourself when that pipeline dries up? Like CNS goes through ups and downs. Right now it's up,
Yeah.
but
Hmm.
I don't think rare disease ever will. Oncology never will. But sometimes you know, like respiratory, for example, cardio.
Hmm.
I've seen those go through ups and downs. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool that you get to be diversified a little bit.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think what I like about going to Premiere is I feel like it's a little bit smaller, than Cineos and Icon, the big guys. So I get to see a lot of like what the clinical lead does, what the project manager does. So I feel like I've really been part of the whole team a lot. Like I get to have a lot of one-on-ones with my line manager and with my clinical lead and, talk to them about endpoints and about what's going on study-wise versus just going to my sites and doing my work. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I really like that aspect that I can, kind of get to see what everybody does and feel like I have a say and an input in what happens. So I've really enjoyed that.
You do you have any advice for sites to make life for CRAs easier?
I would say schedule out monitoring visits early. Be available. One of the biggest things that I tell my sites is if at any moment you have a question and you're not sure, should you do this or should just call me. Call me,
You
email
answer?
me. Let's figure it out now before I go on site and I'm like, all right, what happened? Now this is a deviation and we have to report to the IRB and we have to do these things. So every single time I have a site, I have a new site, I'm always like, call me.
Mm.
Anything, anytime, call me,
And you
email me.
answer.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I almost always answer. I like to be because I mean, I was there, I was a coordinator. I
I think
understand.
coordinators make the best CRAs. I mean, I had a stint as a CRA too in between sites. I was actually like 3.5 years of
Mhm.
monitoring. And yeah, I had a totally different perspective because as a site owner, well, prior to that, a coordinator, I was always a little bit afraid of my monitors. And then
Mhm.
when I had that stint, I realized that, monitors are just doing their job. They're just filling out reports. They're not like trying to get you. So then I
Uh-huh.
completely changed my attitude. But I noticed for my employees, because they don't have that perspective, they're brand new, they're
Mhm.
afraid now of monitors. And I tell them
Uh,
that they shouldn't be afraid. And sometimes it's okay to like fight back. If they tell you something it's not right, push
yeah.
back.
Mhm.
They're afraid. My employees now are afraid because they're new, but I'm telling them slowly how to go about doing things.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like there's a lot of things that a CRA does that the CRC doesn't even know. Like we're all on a team. Like we're not against you. We want the site to do well. We don't want to walk in and clean up issues and deal with things. We all want the same goal. So I kind of, when I was a CRC, I kind of wish I would have looked at it a little bit more that way versus like, oh, great. Like now I have to go through everything, make sure everything's perfect.
But you had no way of knowing back then, like me too.
Yeah.
Now I get to do it again, so I have like a whole new opinion now.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little bit easier. Now, as far as like when you're at the site, I know when I used to monitor too, there was really big sites, AMCs. I had
Hmm.
really small sites. I'm not sure which ones I preferred. I mean, they both have their advantages, but like, what's your ideal site to monitor at? Like, how much should the coordinator talk to you? Um, should they just say hi and bye? And
Hmm.
have you emailed them? Like, how do you prefer to work?
I prefer a smaller site, definitely. Just because I know the coordinator, I feel like they can almost answer all of my questions. They know exactly what's going on. They know the ins and outs of everything. The pharmacy is, the next door over. everything is very close and everybody knows what's going on. Versus when I go to a big hospital, like in Houston, it's a huge hospital. I've got to walk like 2 buildings away to get to the pharmacy, but the pharmacy doesn't know what the site is doing and who's weighing the IP and who's putting a sticker on it. Should they have put a sticker on it? So definitely, I prefer a smaller site. And as far as coordinators, how I like to work with coordinators is I prefer they'll come and say hi, and then I'll give them like an action items list or like things I need to accomplish today. And then I like a check in before lunch for at least 30 minutes and be like, hey, I'm gonna go to lunch. These are a few things that we should work on before the day's over. And then at the end of the day, get together maybe like 30 minutes before I leave and see if we can knock anything out right then. Um, and that's pretty much how I like it. So like 3 to 4 check-ins, I would say, and I would say at least 30 minutes each time. And then I do prefer when I meet with the PI for the coordinator to be there as well, because a lot of the times, the PI is like, "That's a great question."
Yeah, they don't know the specifics.
Yeah.
All right. Then say I was gonna say then about PI. Like,
Mhm.
do you feel like most of them are the same at this point? What you've had, what 9 sites that you've monitored so far?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they're all so different. Even when I was a
What's the
coordinator,
spectrum? What's
you
their
have
spectrum?
yes, I would say that you have the very like hands-off PI that goes in, does the physical, and signs off on the lab results. And they're just very like, yeah, this is a great study. Everything's good. Patients are good. And then you have the PIs that are a little bit more hands-on, that are like, yeah, like I was talking to this subject and this was happening. They're really assessing things. They're calling subjects, stuff like that. And then I've had the very hands-on PI. Like, I'm going to call the sponsor right now. I'm really cool with the medical monitor. This happened. And then I was talking to this subject and this was happening. So I feel like I've seen all the different kinds of PIs. I'm sure there's a lot more. I'm fairly new to the CRA game, so I'm sure there's a ton more, but I've seen at least those three. And
Are
some that
those are those like from that spectrum? Like, does it does it correlate with how good they are as a PI?
oh, that's a hard question.
I don't know. That's what we do around here.
Yeah, I that's hard because I've seen some sites do really, really well with the hands-off PI because their coordinator is so good.
Yeah.
And then I've seen some sites that need that hands-on PI. So I think what it comes down to it is the DOA, the delegation of tasks. How well do you think that your coordinator can do on their own? And I feel like a lot of PIs nowadays are, you know, they're they're bringing in a coordinator that's research naive and they're also hands off. And that's where you're running into things like that versus the PI that's going to be hands on until they feel their coordinator can take on more of it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess what does one start thinking about after they become a CRA?
I would say so actually at the beginning of my CRA career, I was like, I wonder if I wanted to own a site. I was like, I feel like that's something that I'd love to do.
I see. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. So I went back and forth on if I wanted to do that. And then once I got into this role, I was like, oh, maybe I want to be a PM, maybe I want to be a CL. So I've looked into a few different things. I definitely want to be a CRA for at least 2, 3 more years, definitely get more experience. I'd love to dabble in oncology. I think that'd be really interesting.
Oh yeah, it's a whole nother planet like that. I had one, no, sorry, two breast cancer studies I've monitored in my time, and yeah, whole. I mean, learning curve like
Yeah,
crazy. Thank God I knew research because I just
yeah,
basically spent my time learning about breast cancer.
yeah. I think that's super. I'd love to do something like that. I did one oncology, but it was a device study for colorectal cancer screening. That's the closest that I've gotten to it. Um,
It
but
counts.
yeah, yeah. I'm not sure. I like the clinical lead role. I just feel like clinical leads work a lot. Like that is a
Yeah.
like I mean that's a lot. Like all your CRAs are calling you.
But isn't that like the job CRAs want? Like, or at least when they get started, and then maybe they
Yeah,
realize like, oh, that's a lot of work. But
yeah.
is that still like the goal for most CRAs that you've encountered? or are they just all over the place as far as what they want?
I've really heard a few different things because I have met a ton of CRAs, and I feel like a lot of them want to go into management, but then a lot of them don't want to be in charge of anybody else. They want to be in charge of their sites, and the CRA role is a very independent role. Like you do what you're supposed to do, you schedule your travel, you go on site, and you don't have to answer to a whole bunch of people. And a lot of the CRAs that I have met, they love that. They want to do their work, get there, get out, get all the reports in, and be done. They don't want to talk to a ton of people. They don't want to manage people's timesheets. They don't want to do any of that. And
Right.
yeah, so the more senior CRAs I've met, that's pretty much their personality. Like, no, I'm good. I can sit in a room for 3 days on site, get everything done,
Hmm. That's
and I'm good.
interesting. So the
Yeah.
more senior ones are the ones that are more like introverted to some extent,
Yeah.
or at least they just manage themselves and that's enough. And then
Mhm.
the ones that make it to positions of like lead CRA,
Mhm.
or some CROs have line managers, or
Mhm.
you're saying those, and definitely the site owners too. From my experiences, growing segment of our client base for sites we help get studies for is our CRAs.
Mhm.
Um, so those tend to be, at least I hope, if you're going to open a site, you got to be a salesperson first, um, or at least have the right mindset, which sounds like you do. But yeah, you just started, so
Yeah.
the beauty of this is you don't have to decide right now.
Yeah. I am I definitely was not expecting a lot of things that came with this role. Absolutely. I thought, that I was going to go on site and I was going to review source and I was going to figure out all the mistakes and, put out queries and write my reports and be done. But there is way more to this role that comes with the position. And a lot of the coordinators that I've met and talked to during my visits, they're like, how do I become a CRA? I want to be a CRA. And I look at all of them and I go, how comfortable are you with not being home? How comfortable are you in a hotel? 80% of the time. Like, make sure that you're comfortable with that you're comfortable with being in an airport, that you're okay with leaving. I was like, first and foremost, because a lot of people are like, oh, it's travel, it's glamorized, you get to eat a whole bunch of new food, you get to like rent a car and sleep in a hotel, like how fun. And I just tell them all, I was like, remember, like, it's not all easy. You're going to get to a site and not all coordinators are the same coordinator you are. Not all coordinators are the same coordinator. Everybody's going
Oh
to be
man, yeah, I've met some.
everybody's going to there's going to be some coordinators that don't write any times on anything. There's going to be some coordinators that write everything everywhere. So I was like, you have to constantly adjust your way of thinking and critical thinking when you're going to a different site, because what they're doing may not be wrong. It's just not what you're used to, you know?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I tell all of them, you kind of have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. But all coordinators, I'm like, just think really hard about it, and make sure that that's something that you're okay with because it's completely different. I think it's
yeah, yeah.
completely different than coordinating.
Yeah, I tell them that too. Also, if they don't want to travel, like in-house CRA or
Mhm.
remote site monitor, that's the non-traveling, like one tier probably below a CRA is the, and
Yeah,
as far as pay is concerned, is
yeah,
um in-house and remote site monitor.
yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. All right, so glad to have met you from TikTok. Um, Probably the first podcast I've done from there. So welcome and thank you for commenting.
Yeah, anytime.
And so everybody check out Alyssa's LinkedIn profile underneath. Like, subscribe, comment, share, get to know her, and catch y'all later, guys. Bye bye.
Thanks.